It was close to midnight when Jake's phone buzzed. He almost ignored it. After all, it had been another long day. Work, laundry, helping his 8-year-old daughter finish her science project, and finally tucking her into bed. But something about the call made him glance at the screen. Unknown number. He sighed and almost let it go to voicemail. Then he answered. And that one simple act of kindness changed his life forever. Before we dive into this emotional story, don't forget to subscribe to Echoes of Dad, where we share real moving stories about fatherhood, compassion, and the quiet heroes among us. If this story touches your heart, hit that like button and tell us in the comments what kindness means to you. Now, let's begin. Jake was a single dad living in a small town just outside Denver, Colorado. He worked as a delivery supervisor for a local logistics company, a job that didn't pay much, but it kept the lights on and food on the table. He'd been with the company for 5 years. His boss, Claire Thompson, was a sharp, no-nonsense CEO in her mid-30s who had taken over after her father retired. To be honest, Jake didn't know much about her. She was polite, professional, and distant, the kind of person who wore confidence like armor. She drove expensive cars, dressed like she was always headed to an important meeting, and had a reputation for being cold in all business. But that night, at midnight, she wasn't the boss in a sharp suit. She was a voice trembling on the phone, barely able to speak. Jake? She slurred. I'm sorry, I didn't know who else to call. I can't drive. I think I'm near Birch Street. My car's parked somewhere. Please. Jake sat up straight in bed. Claire? Are you okay? There was a pause, and then he heard her quietly sob. Without thinking twice, Jake pulled on his jeans and jacket, slipped his old sneakers on, and grabbed his car keys. His daughter, Emma, was fast asleep, so he called his neighbor, Mrs. Lewis, a kind widow who often watched Emma when Jake worked late. She agreed to stay over until he got back. The streets were quiet as he drove. Snowflakes danced under the streetlights. When he reached Birch Street, he spotted a sleek black car parked slightly crooked near the curb. Inside, leaning against the steering wheel, was Claire, her head resting on her arm, her breath fogging up the glass. Jake knocked gently on the window. She startled awake, her eyes glassy and tired. Hey, it's me, Jake, he said softly. You called me. Her face twisted with embarrassment. I didn't mean to bother you. I just didn't know who else. Don't worry about it, he said quickly. Let's get you home safe, okay? She hesitated but nodded. Jake opened the passenger door of his truck, helped her in, and buckled her seatbelt. Her perfume mixed with the cold winter air, a sharp reminder that even people who looked put together could fall apart sometimes. The drive was silent at first. Claire kept her eyes on her lap, mumbling an apology every few minutes. Jake finally said, You don't have to apologize. We all have rough nights. She looked at him, her eyes red but searching. You're kind, Jake. I didn't expect you to come. He shrugged. You'd do the same for someone who needed help. She gave a weak smile. You think so? I like to think kindness still counts for something, he replied. When they reached her apartment complex, Jake parked and helped her out. She stumbled slightly, and he gently steadied her arm. Inside, her modern apartment was spotless, cold and minimal, like no one really lived there. Can I get you some water? Jake asked. Claire nodded, sitting down on the edge of the couch. He found a glass in the kitchen, filled it, and handed it to her. She looked small then, not the commanding boss who gave speeches, but a tired woman trying to hold herself together. Thank you, she whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't want anyone else to see me like this. Jake sat down across from. Everyone needs help sometimes, even bosses. She let out a soft laugh, a fragile sound. You must think I'm pathetic. Not at all, Jake said. I think you're human. She stared at him for a long moment. Then, without saying another word, she whispered, Please don't tell anyone, and drifted off to sleep on the couch. Jake gently draped a blanket over her, scribbled a quick note. You're safe. Get some rest. Jake, and quietly let himself out. The next morning at work, Jake tried to act normal. He half expected an awkward confrontation or maybe even a dismissal. After all, bosses don't usually like being reminded of their weakest moments. But what happened that morning shocked everyone. Around 10 a.m., Claire walked into the office. She looked rested, calm, and, surprisingly, smiling. She carried 2 cups of coffee. One of them she placed on Jake's desk. Morning, she said. Jake blinked. Morning, ma'am. Call me Claire, she said softly, and thank you for last night. He smiled awkwardly. No problem. I'm just glad you're okay. She looked around, then lowered her voice. You didn't tell anyone? Of course not, Jake said. That's not my business to share. Something in her expression changed, like a wall crumbling. You know, people usually take advantage of my mistakes. They wait for me to slip up so they can talk about it. Jake shrugged. That's not kindness. That's gossip. Claire smiled again, this time genuinely. I could use more people like you on my team. From that day on, things were different. Claire started joining the team for coffee breaks. She asked Jake about his daughter, about how he managed to juggle work and parenting. Jake told her about Emma's dream of becoming a vet and how they watched animal rescue videos together on weekends. One Friday afternoon, Claire showed up at Jake's desk again. Hey, she said, mind if I meet Emma sometime? I think she'd love the zoo passes I got from a client. Jake hesitated, then nodded. She'd love. The next weekend, Claire met Emma. The little girl, bright and curious, instantly liked her. Claire laughed more that day than anyone at the office had ever seen. She fed giraffes with Emma, shared cotton candy, and even rode the carousel. As the weeks passed, something beautiful happened. The ice around Claire melted. She started showing up to company events not just as a boss, but as a person. She organized family days at work, added flexible hours for parents, and even started a small charity fund for employees in crisis. When asked why she made all these changes, Claire said, because someone reminded me that kindness isn't weakness, it's strength. She never mentioned Jake's name, but everyone knew. Months later, on the anniversary of that night, Claire invited Jake and Emma to her house for dinner. It wasn't fancy, just homemade pasta and laughter echoing in the kitchen. After Emma went to play with Claire's dog, Claire turned to Jake. You know, that night I called you. I was at my lowest point. I'd just come from a meeting where the board told me I wasn't living up to my father's legacy. I went to a bar, trying to forget everything. Jake nodded quietly. I thought I was alone, she continued, but you showed up. No judgment, no lecture, just kindness. That night changed how I see people, and myself. Jake smiled softly. Kindness has a way of doing that. Claire looked at him for a moment. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't picked up the phone? Jake chuckled. I don't think about that. I'm just glad I did. She reached across the table and touched his hand. So am I. From that night on, their friendship grew into something deeper, built not on status or circumstance, but on respect, understanding, and simple kindness. Life didn't magically become perfect. Jake still worked hard, still faced bills and school meetings. But things felt lighter. He had a friend in Claire, a person who had once been a symbol of power and distance, now a reminder that everyone, no matter how strong they seem, needs kindness too. And for Claire, that one night taught her that leadership isn't about control, it's about compassion. She became the kind of boss people wanted to work for, not because they feared her, but because they believed in her. All because one single dad chose to pick up the phone at midnight. So if you ever wonder whether kindness matters, remember Jake and Claire. Sometimes the smallest act can change a life. Sometimes it can change two. Thank you for watching this story on Echoes of Dad. If it touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness still exists in this world. Because at the end of the day, it's not grand gestures that make us heroes. It's the quiet moments when we choose to care. Kindness costs nothing, but its echo lasts forever.